My Hero Academia made me forget to watch it with a particularly critical eye. I was just so taken up by the characters and by the story and by the plot that I didn't care about the usual things I care about. I couldn't pay attention much to the camera work or to the animation styles being used, and both of those things are things that are utilized very well, but they aren't anything that I would have had that much to say about on their own. What I really felt the need to talk about was the characters and how much the show resonates with me. The characters in this show are phenomenal overall. They're also pretty simple. They're simple though in a way that's refreshing, in a way that characters usually aren't simple anymore. Deku is the best example of this, and he, frankly, alone could carry the show for me without any of these other characters here, just because I feel that more and more shows are gravitating towards unlikable protagonists who become more likable. And I'm totally fine with that. That's an arc that I enjoy a lot. That's an arc that I've enjoyed in some of my favorite television shows. Another arc that I enjoy that's used a lot is a character that is at least relatable and maybe very likable becoming less likable as time goes on. But what I enjoy, or at least what I miss a lot, are just characters that you want to succeed from the outset. There's not a moment in this show where I don't want Deku to succeed in his goal. There isn't a moment here where I don't want to root him on, because no matter what he's doing, he's giving it his all. He's doing everything he can. This show, because of his character and because of how the character's motivations are treated in general, has taught me an immense amount about storytelling. Not anything that I necessarily hadn't heard before. I've heard about how important it is to have an active protagonist, but I've never seen a show where that's used so powerfully, where you see it put on display that this active protagonist can carry the show. It pushes everything forward. This show doesn't have a consistent villain yet. Not a particularly interesting villain, at least. But it also doesn't need one. Because where most shows would start to crumble or to just not be as fun because they're missing that antagonist, this show doesn't need that sort of thing because it has such a likable main character and such a likable cast of characters. The writer of this manga and the people who adapted it have made brilliant decisions as far as storytelling is concerned, where every character has the same motivation in the end. They all want to be the best hero, or at least the vast majority of them do. Every character's motivation then is in conflict with every other character's motivation, so they're all unable to always work together, but you get to see that they're still friends, that there's still camaraderie, that it's not a doom and gloom idea. This isn't a doom and gloom conflict. This is a conflict where we can feel good, because no matter who is succeeding, we want them to succeed. I mean, obviously there's some exceptions, but for the most part, if a character's succeeding, we want them to succeed, even if it's not our protagonist. And the show also makes a very smart decision in not making this easy for the protagonist, for Deku. He needs to work to get what he wants. It doesn't just fall into his lap. He has all this motivation, so the show lets us see the motivation. He needs to work and work and work to even see anything, to even begin to get to do anything. And I find myself, and maybe this is why the show resonates with me so much, I have a tendency to give up on things quickly. If they aren't going well, then I feel like, what's the point anymore? Why am I bothering with this? I'll very quickly give up on something if I feel that it's not successful or not good. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes you need to give up on something and try something new. But at the same time, when I've tried to make YouTube channels time and time and time again, and every time I give up and move on to a new one because I give up because the videos aren't getting as many views as I would like, because I'm not the channel's not growing as fast as I would like, whatever it may be, I just give up. Watching this show, though, it really made me want to keep going at whatever I wanted to do. It really motivated me to see this character who's so motivated to just be able to sit down and watch this show that makes me feel good, because there's no element of real edginess to this show. There's no element of shock factor. This is just a fun, good show. And despite it having this childish front, it's not a particularly childish show. It's incredibly mature, actually, more mature than most shows, I would argue. And despite its simplicity, well, no, not despite its simplicity, because of its simplicity, it manages to be so good. Because simplicity isn't bad. That's another thing that this show reminded me of with storytelling. It's okay to have a simple plot. It's okay to have a simple structure. It's okay to have simple characters. Because simple characters can be incredibly likable. And if you try to throw too much information at the person watching, if you try to give every character the backstory from the outset, we aren't going to care about any of it. Especially if the show tries to throw it at you in a situation where it just doesn't make sense. And that's part of what made this show so smart. At first, when they started having this tournament arc, I was going, well, why would we have a tournament arc this early on in the show? At least I thought that was pretty early on for them to have one. We hadn't even seen a major villain, or not a major villain, at least that we understood that well yet. Not one that I really screamed, this is a good villain to me. So I'm going, well, why are we having a tournament arc already? But the tournament arc made the most sense, because it gave us a chance to see how hard everyone's willing to work. It gave us a chance to see that these people are going to fail and that they need to improve. But that's not a bad thing. That's just a part of life. We all have to improve. We all have to try again. We all have to go and go and go after what we want. I'd say that the second and third episodes of the show probably brought the most to the table individually for me in a lot of ways. Not necessarily in being the most entertaining episodes, but in really locking me into this series and reminding me of how important likable characters are, of how much they can do for a show. Because from the outset, Deku's just willing to work. And he it's not just one type of work. It's not just physical work or mental work. It needs to be both, as we're seeing more and more in the series, that he needs to refocus his mindset. You can't just run at an obstacle and keep punching it and hoping that it'll go away. Eventually, you have to look at something in a different way. You maybe need to shift your mindset about a problem, because life and work isn't all about just hard work. It's about intelligent work. That's another thing I love. They took a theme that could have potentially been very nice, but very childish, and they made it a bit more mature by adding nuance to it. What was I talking about again? Oh yeah, the second and third episodes of this series, where we see Deku training to become a vessel for this ability. The whole idea of cleaning this garbage off of your horizon, off of this beach, of doing things that aren't that grandiose, but are still important, of building yourself, of working, of clearing off all that garbage so that you can see a better version of yourself, so you can see the next day. It's simple symbolism, it's simple imagery, again. But does that make it any less effective? No. Absolutely not. Because you just want to see this little guy succeed, because everybody's been putting him down his whole life, but he never gave up. And how many of us give up when somebody puts us down? How many of us look back and wish that we hadn't given up on something just because somebody put us down? And I'm not blaming anyone of you watching or anybody else for doing that, because I've done that. We've all done that at some point, given up on something. But the show is just a little reminder to not give up necessarily. Yes, we need to keep a level of realism to our ideas and to our goals. Because if I sat down and decided that in 2 weeks I wanted 10,000 subscribers on this channel, I'm going to be disappointed. Most likely. But again, I'm getting off track. Because that's what and I'm getting off track, but I'm not really, because that's what this show makes me think of. It makes me think about things about motivation and how much I want to do different things, more than I've thought about in a while in certain ways. But this show reminded me that if you want something, try. Try. See if you enjoy it. See if you like it. See how good you are at it. Just try. So, thank you for watching this video. I really, really, really appreciate it. If you remember to, you can like and subscribe. I have a Twitter thing if you want to go over there. And I hope that you have an awesome day. And if you haven't watched the show, go watch it. It's a good time. Bye-bye.